Is it just me, or does it seem like being a fund manager requires you to constantly defy the odds? Well, my next guest has done just that for his entire career, from getting into the NFL to launching a $100 million venture fund. My next guest is about to teach you a masterclass on defying the odds and finding another gear in everything you do. All this and more coming right now. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to another episode of Making Billions. I'm your host, Ryan Miller, and today I have my dear friend, Marques Colston. Marques is an NFL champion turned venture investor as the founding partner of a $100 million venture firm called Champion Venture Partners. Marques brings his experience from making it into the NFL to angel investing and now in the pro leagues of a venture fund. So what does this mean? Well, this means that Marques understands how to take on projects and deals and pull out a win, especially when the odds are not on your side. And he's about to teach you and I how to go from the locker room to the boardroom. So Marques, welcome to the show, man.
I appreciate you having me, man. Just a huge fan of the community you're building and just glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we're glad to have you here. We've been very fortunate to be in the top 2%. We're number 5 in the world for venture capital, number 3 for private equity, and it's all because of amazing guests just like you, man. So let's jump right into it. I'm just curious, like, how did you even get into this sector? I got to hear this story, man.
Yeah, so for me, growing up, this really wasn't in the deck of cards I was handed, right? You know, come from humble beginnings, really didn't know what venture capital was, didn't know anything about private equity. My first real lesson in financial services kind of in the world that I'm in now was, you know, getting drafted as a 22-year-old and having to choose a financial advisor, not even really fully grasping the job that I was hiring for. So for me, this has been, you know, kind of the second half of you know, my life to this point. My professional life was able to kind of get into it as an early NFL player, and it was just a space that, for not knowing and not being exposed to it, it felt really germane to kind of come in on the angel investment side and really start to kind of interact with entrepreneurs at a time where, you know, I was kind of in my own little entrepreneurial journey myself, you know, trying to create an NFL career. So just being able to kind of pull those parallels and pull on those parallels between the entrepreneurs and what they were building with early stage companies and the career that I was trying to build for myself as an athlete, I was able to find enough of those through lines to really be able to kind of fall in love with the space. And, you know, 15, 16 years later, I'm still in it and still enjoying my time, still learning. But it's been a fun ride so far. Hopefully it's just getting started.
Yeah. Now, you and I, we've got to know each other for a bit now. You have an interesting story that when you first went to college and you first stepped onto campus, you knew what you were going to do. Now, not everybody has that luxury. Some people figure it out as they go along, but you knew exactly where you're going to go. You maybe walk me through that process of day one on campus, walking in there. You had you just knew what you were going to do. And then how did that lead you into the NFL? And what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was an interesting time for me, man. I was an 18-year-old kid, had just got a scholarship offer to go play college football. And, you know, I walked on campus day one with the goal. It wasn't even a dream at that point. It was a hard, fast goal that I was going to play in the NFL. And I was kind of able to walk on campus with that level of confidence or delusion, depending on who you ask. But the only challenge I had was I wasn't at Alabama or LSU. I was at Hofstra University up in New York. But nevertheless, I stepped on campus with this singular focus, a singular mission. And, you know, it was, you know, smaller school, but it was a pretty rocky start for me. You know, didn't get a chance to play too much as a freshman. Some injuries happened and I was able to get on the field maybe the last third of the season, you know, make some plays, but nothing earth shattering. Same thing my sophomore year, my junior year, again, nothing earth shattering. But that singular focus and that goal that I had for myself, like that North Star never changed, never shifted. The thing that did shift a little bit was the pathway to get there. But, you know, like you said, man, I walked on that campus day one and I knew I had a destination in mind. And, you know, most people would have called me delusional. I like to call it irrational confidence, but that was it for me. That was why I was there, you know, and that was a thing that was a spot that I wasn't going to allow any person, any circumstance to kind of push me off of that spot. That's what I was there to do and put everything I had into making it happen.
That's right. And you did. I remember you telling me this story. You made it to the draft and folks, we're building on something. This is going to relate to finance in a minute, but I don't want to skip past this because this is important because we all have felt what Marques went through. You're right on the cusp of greatness and everybody wants to be the guy. And sometimes you have this irrational confidence that you mentioned. Maybe we'll get into that in a minute. And So you show up, draft is happening, and it's not first round. This is not second round. How did that go?
Very slowly. It was at that point, the draft was 2 days long. The first 3 rounds were on Saturday. Rounds 4 through 7 were on Sunday. So, I kind of came into the draft. I kind of knew how the rest of the world saw me at that point. And I think that's really important. Just people think about self-awareness and it's all internal. I think the other part of self-awareness is understanding how you're perceived as well. So, I was able to go into day 1, rounds 1 through 3, and I didn't really have expectations of getting picked on day 1. So there wasn't like this feeling of disappointment, at first. But, round 1 goes, no problem. Round 2 comes and goes, no problem. Round 3 comes and goes. Again, kind of low bar, no expectations. I kind of knew that I was going to be a day 2 guy, right? That's kind of what all my agent told me. I had a couple people that kind of worked in the industry. They all told me I would be a day 2 guy. So day 1 came and went, no harm, no foul. I get a call right before the day 2 starts, right before Sunday starts. Draft starts about noon. So one of my guys that I knew worked at Yahoo Sports at the time, kind of an insider, called me pretty early in the morning and said, look, round 4 is going to start up, kind of be ready. There's some teams checking for you. So at that point, expectations start to hit. So the round 4 starts up, no calls, no phone doesn't ring at all. Round 4 comes and goes, sweating a little bit. Round 5 comes and goes, still phone doesn't ring at all, starting to sweat a little bit more. Round 6, everybody's over at the house. Everybody's kind of expecting something to happen on this day. You're getting a little antsy, right? Round 6 comes and goes, still no phone calls. And my phone doesn't ring for the first time until about the middle of round 7, which is the last round in the draft. And at that time, I got a couple calls from teams that had no picks left. So that's when it started to hit me like, okay, I might not get drafted. I gotta kind of turn the page from this ceremonial thing and start to think strategically about, all right, if I don't get drafted, that means I'll be a free agent. That means I get to pick my situation. So I'm starting to go through the scenarios and see, all right, where's the best situation where I can actually go somewhere, have a chance to compete, get on the field. So we get to the tail end of round 7, and with the 4th to the last pick in the draft, pick number 252, my phone rang and I saw a 504 area code. And at that point, I'm not going to lie to you, I was like, man, I kind of would rather be a free agent at this point because I'm getting picked at the very end of the draft. I don't really have a say in this. The team was coming off of a really, really, really hard year the year before with Hurricane Katrina. So I saw the 504 area code, and it's kind of this feeling of I'm grateful. I'm happy that the phone is ringing, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I thought the Texans or the Cardinals might have been a better fit for me. So I take the call. It's Sean Payton on the other line. Get a chance to talk to him. Get a chance to talk to the general manager for a minute. And it was kind of this feeling of extreme joy because it's the thing that the singular focus is kind of paid off, and you're here now. You're kind of at the precipice. But then at the same time, it's this feeling of, all right, now the work really starts. Mm-hmm. Right? I didn't get drafted where I wanted to. I got drafted in a place that tells me I've got a less than 1% chance of being a starter day 1. Once the joy of the situation and the ceremony wears off and your family's all around, your friends are celebrating, the reality kicks in like, all right, for most people, this is an endpoint. This is a destination. If I really want to do this, this has got to be the launch pad. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the mentality that I took into my rookie year. I took into kind of getting ready for my rookie year. It was all about the draft is an opportunity. And I didn't get the opportunity that I wanted. I didn't get the phone call when I wanted it, but it's here. And what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I love that. Remember something interesting. You said when that happens, you kind of look around and in your mind, maybe in your hometown, you were the guy. And by the way, this ties into high finance, as you well know. There's tons of parallels between football and high finance. And you might have been the guy in kind of your local circles, right? You might have been the friend that was always talking economics, or that weird guy like I was, or voted most likely to be a millionaire, whatever it is. But then you enter this next level. And something you said I really would love to share is to say, but when you get to the pros and you look around at your colleagues and coworkers and teammates and then other people on other teams, and it really sets in that you might have been the guy back home, but so was every one of these people in this room. They were all the guy. And so you're like, okay, like there's nothing special about everyone special. You didn't quite put it that way. But what we're saying is like, it's helpful to remember that there are really no finish lines. There's just newer starting lines. There's only starting lines. And so, like you said, when I got drafted into the NFL, some people might think, hey, I crossed the finish line. I was like, nope, that's just the next starting line. And so there's always starting lines, never any finish lines. Would you agree with that?
1,000%. And that I can tell you, it's a jarring feeling at first, right? When you step into a locker room and like I got drafted with guys that I'm a fan of football before anything, right? So I got drafted with Reggie Bush, right? I watched Reggie. We're the same age, but I watched him, you know, as he became one of the best college football players to ever live, right? So he was the number 2 pick in the draft. He was the first draft pick for the Saints. So you walk in the locker room for the first time and it is jarring to where it's like, yeah, I might have been the guy, but everybody in here is the guy. And it's really the first time in your life that, well, I can speak for myself. It was really the first time where I knew that talent meant nothing, because when everyone's equally talented, it's no longer an advantage. So it was really the first time where I had to figure out that my talent, my athletic ability, that's a great base. That's a great foundation. But what else are you? What else do you bring to the table to separate yourself? And that for me was a tone setter. It really not just set the tone for my athletic career, it set the tone for the rest of my business career. Just because when you see that talent is not enough, then you got to go figure out what else is enough. And that was really my journey as a rookie. That was my journey for every single year that I played, simply because things change, right? I started at 22 years old. I was an athletic freak and I could do anything that I wanted athletically, but I didn't have the game knowledge. I didn't have the reps or the time on task. So I leaned heavily on athletic ability at 22. By the time I retired at 32, I probably lost 3 or 4 steps. Couldn't do half of the things that I once could do athletically, but the time on task, the reps, the pattern recognition, I was still able to play and perform at a very similar level using a different skill set, more of a cerebral and mental skill set. So it really set the tone for understanding that talent is a starting point, it's a foundation, but your ability to perform at a high level, your ability to not just succeed but sustain success, is kind of this, to your point, it's a bunch of different starting points. And you've always got to be able to recalibrate yourself to where you're at in that moment, and then use what's God-given, combine it with, you know, the skill sets that you can intentionally go out and build to kind of remake yourself as a product in every different chapter.
Well said, man. And so that begs the question, I'm sure everybody listening to this wants to know, myself included, is, so you had that, you said, I was the guy, but then I get into the big leagues, and I often say what got us here won't get us there. And so you're saying, great, you hit that point. Now you gotta play different, right? You played enough to get to this point, but from this point to the next starting line, it's different rules, different skills that maybe I may or may not have, but I better get them quick if I'm going to sustain this, right? And it's the same in finance, right? So you might have been a great accountant and graduated top of your class, or maybe you're dating cheerleaders. I don't know. You did something cool, all right, in college. Great. What got you to the end of that one is not going to get you to the end of the next phase. And so you're going to have to evolve. And so you did that. And so speaking of evolution, how did you go from the NFL to, say, doing your first investment deal? Maybe walk us through that, because I know a lot of people around the world, they're going to be able to relate to this. Is to say, doing your first deal is taking something from another area, another sector, and applying it in a different way, whether it's skills, assets, partnerships, access. So how did you take your experience from the NFL and apply that into your first deal? Walk me through that.
For sure. So a lot of it is again, that mindset of reinvention and kind of remaking yourself for the moment and for the situation. And in that, if you're always comfortable, comfort invites complacency, right? So for me, stepping off and kind of doing something new in the business world, that was an opportunity to do something that, one, there were a lot of my colleagues that were getting into the sports, the sports tech. At that time, it was really like sports science. A lot of my colleagues were kind of getting into tech investing. And again, for me, it was a foreign world. It wasn't a world that I had a lot of exposure to. So when I got my first opportunity, I tried to make sure that it was in a world that I understood really well, which was sports. So for me, that first deal was, there was an indoor football team that was coming to my hometown. A league was popping up, a franchise in my hometown in central Pennsylvania. And for me, it was an opportunity to learn the business side of the sport that I was playing, but at the same time, kind of takes what I knew to be true about the world of sports, about football as a product, and be able to kind of use some of those insights and some of those experiences to really support this business. So for me, year one, there was a current owner in place. I invested alongside him and just kind of shadowed him for years just so I can learn the ropes, learn the ins and outs of what was actually required in that role of running the franchise. And, I kind of came into it understanding everything from the outside looking in the NFL bubble. But what I started to realize was that everything that was happening in the NFL franchises and in the New Orleans Saints franchise that I was playing in, everything was happening just at a much smaller scale at the same indoor football organization. So again, being able to see the patterns and being able to map those experiences, it kind of gave me a one up on, the things that I thought I should be looking for, the things that I was interested in learning, the things that I knew I didn't know and had to get exposure to, all of those things. So that first season, I just kind of sat in the shadow and I watched, and I took enough notes and I built up enough internal confidence to say, in year two, I kind of want to try my hand at this, and I kind of want to build this in my likeness. So year two, I bought my partner out, took full control of the team, assumed the role of president general manager, which at that level means everything. Everything from, making sure that the off season was set up, that the players had housing, the players were well taken care of as they were training to get ready for the season, all the way through making sure we had venue dates locked in, making sure that we had, the logistics crew, because we were playing in a venue that we were renting. So there was field turnovers, the whole nine, managing those crews, everything from game operations. I had the little headset on. I was actually directing the game and, the TV timeouts, the whole nine. I purposefully did everything outside of the world that I knew, which was pick the players and, actually help the on-field product. That's the thing that I did not touch with a 10-foot pole. I went and hired a coach and said, listen, anything you need, let me know, but this is your show, go run it. And, I purposefully stepped into all of the places that were new, all of the places that were foreign and uncomfortable. Because sports taught me that the best way to learn is to dive in and learn. You can read as many books as you want. You can ingest as much information as you can, but ultimately you got to find a way to make that information yours. And you only do that through doing. And, that was my approach. I told myself, I'm going to get the information year one. I'm going to apply it year two. There's going to be some things that I win at. There's going to be some things that I lose at. But ultimately, come year three, I'm not going to have information anymore. I'm going to have real insights. And once you have insights, now you can adjust on the fly. And that was kind of my experience. With that first investment, it was very hands-on. I realized that I'm not a passive investor. I'm somebody that wants to invest not just my capital resources, but I want to roll my sleeves up and, learn the business, figure out how to help the business, how to build the business and scale it. It was an amazing learning experience in every way except how to make money.
You told me about that. So not the most profitable one. We've all had them, man. All kings have scars. Yep. So you rolled up your sleeves, you got involved, and by the way, welcome to venture capital. You're still doing it today, but in different ways. And you shared with me in other conversations that we have had. I remember this story vividly because this is a very relatable one. So you go in, you're literally doing everything. You got a nice title. You're helping out the community. So you're making a positive impact with your investment. And so it really seemed in the beginning that this was working out well. Now, financially, probably not the best one that you've ever done, but you learned a lot of lessons along the way from doing that. And some of them were maybe I don't want to use the word mistakes, but because I wouldn't call it what you did a mistake, but they were, maybe you talked about recalibrating. And so you came in with what you knew, but you realized looking back that maybe there was a different approach that would have helped better. I'm wondering if you can walk back and just talk about the lesson you learned coming out of that from acting like an all-star versus something else.
Yeah, I mean, it was very germane to me to be in a foreign situation and feel like you have to be the all-star and feel like you have to be the gap filler, the kind of the ultimate playmaker, right? Because that's what my athletic career taught me, right?
All new investors feel this. All new investors feel this.
And it's the thing that company and that opportunity taught me. That was my first real leadership lesson, in that sometimes in order to lead, you've got to be able to zoom out and take a step back from that all-star role and really be able to lean on the team that you built and really be able to empower that team. And one of the things that I can see in hindsight is in trying to step in and do everything. Yes, I learned a lot. I personally learned a ton. But what I also did was a team that I hired that were really talented, capable people. In trying to go out and do everything and be the superhero, I was not empowering that group, and I was not letting that group kind of go out and do and operate at the best of their abilities. And, in hindsight, that's leadership. That's one of the biggest challenges in leadership is when you feel like you're a talented individual that can do everything you can do doesn't mean it's something that you should do. And the ability to, again, lean into the team that you built. You brought them in because you're confident in them. You brought them in because they're capable and they're more than capable. At some point, you got to be able to give them the opportunity to show their capabilities. And, coming out of that lesson, coming out of that one opportunity, that first opportunity, that was a lesson that really, really set heavy with me, just because, I knew what it looked like to be on a team. I knew what it felt like to be on a really good team. But in building one myself for the first time, I kind of took the ball and ran with it a little too much. So that was one that really, really stuck with me going forward and really sticks with me kind of as the foundation of I guess you can call my leadership style today, which is, again, you got talented folks, let them go be who they are.
That's right. And that's leadership. This is something I drill when I walk my son to school, and I always say, what's leadership about? And I've trained him on this. So this is simple enough for an 8-year-old to understand, I hope. What my definition is leadership isn't about getting people to do what you want them to do. Leadership is about getting them to do something they never thought they could. And so really helping people to understand what they're capable of, what their value is, the fact that you trust them, that's what leaders do. And by the way, my first deal, I rolled up my sleeves and I just wanted to help. And you don't know what you're doing because you're used to being the guy. I was used to being the guy in finance and in school and in my peer group. And then you jump into this deal like some hotshot, and then you look back and say, hey, I just wanted to help. I mean, no harm, no foul, but there are some lessons to take away from that. So I absolutely love everything you said. So then how do you go from doing a couple of, or maybe your first deal, to actually doing a couple more? Maybe walk us through the evolution of the investor.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, that indoor football organization, I ran that for 3 years. From there, I actually got an opportunity to invest in a league that was higher up, the Arena Football League. So I bought into the Philadelphia Soul, and that was very similar operation, but a very different role for me, because I was walking into an established organization. I was joining as a minority partner. They kind of already they were already a successful organization, right? So that role was one that was really kind of that helicopter ownership role. I supported on the sponsorship side and some strategic partnerships, that kind of high level stuff. But for me, it was really an opportunity to be around some other high performers, some other folks that were on, the cap table at the Soul. These are polished businessmen. We had a real estate fund manager. We've got a former NFL quarterback who's turned into a business mogul himself. We've got 2 or 3 other guys just on the cap table that were really, really established businessmen just within my organization, not to mention the other teams. Got a chance to work pretty closely with a group out of Washington, the Leontis family and Monumental Sports Group. And for me, at that point in my life, after the 3 years of just kind of the true entrepreneurial, roll your sleeves up, make chicken salad type of opportunity to step into something with really established business folks, be able to serve on a couple committees and really served on a business development committee for a couple years. Really high level partnerships. It was just a really unique experience for somebody like me who was 27 at the time to just be surrounded by some really, really high level business folks. And again, start to see how they think, how they process, how they communicate, all of those things. I remember vividly, I was in one of the board meetings. And I'm typically a quiet, reserved person, but in this room, I'm super quiet just because I know who's around the table. And I know what they've done and I know what I haven't done. So I'm just going to be quiet and listen and take in all the information, insights I can. And I remember vividly that someone from the Monumental team, kind of asked what I thought about something. And to me, that was like, man, you guys do this on a day-to-day basis. Why the hell you care what I think? But just to be in that room and be in that room for, I was there for like five years, I think it was. Similar business, but totally different experience, totally different opportunity to kind of take not necessarily a backseat, but take a more passive seat and watch and learn to see how these successful businessmen became who they were, because you don't just start as a arena football league owner. You got to go build something incredible first to create the opportunity to invest in something like this. So that experience came at a really interesting time, coming off the heels of my first entrepreneurial ownership experience. So that mix, that 7 or 8 year run of doing those two things, probably I did some things in between, but those two really set the foundation for, I think, my lens in business. And from there, I've always had that entrepreneurial itch. I've always had that love for trying something new and trying something that's uncomfortable. But those two experiences really kind of gave me the foundation to like operationalize it. And those are experiences that, I say it all the time, like what I paid into to be a part of those organizations, became my MBA, 2 and 3-fold, just because you don't get those experiences from reading a textbook and doing case studies. Just having the opportunity to do that boots on the ground for 7 years, was a really incredible learning experience that, again, is the foundation of everything that I do in business today.
Brilliant. When you were starting to put in the reps in investing, this is really where you solidified something that you now call irrational confidence. Maybe just what does that mean to you?
For me, it's understanding the odds that you're playing against, right? So for me, trying to get drafted and trying to go on and have a successful NFL career, for the entrepreneurs that I was invested in, is very, very similar odds, right? It's a very, very, very small percentage of the people that make it, and the other 98% don't make it. And, irrational confidence for me is understanding the odds, how they sit today, but also understanding that through working intentionally, I can shift the odds in my favor. And to where that 98% becomes about you guys. I don't know which one of you 98% are not going to make it, but I'm going to be in this top 2, because I'm not just putting in mindless work. I'm putting in intentional, strategic work that's getting me from the state that I'm at today to help me become who I need to be to take advantage of the opportunity that I'm pursuing. And for me, that feeling of irrational confidence was one that, again, is born out of stepping on Hofstra's campus like I was at Alabama. It was born out of being drafted as the 4th to the last pick with a less than 1% chance to start. And, it just kind of carried into the world of entrepreneurship with very similar odds. And when you're used to kind of dealing with that framing and that circumstance, entrepreneurship feels right at home for you.
Brilliant. So knowing the odds, but having the confidence, because the odds are really around things you don't control often, but the irrational confidence is saying it's not confidence or lack of confidence in the odds. It's confidence in your strategy and your ability to put in more time than anyone else. Would you say that's a fair summary?
100%. And it's back to the talent conversation, right? Because what the odds are measured against are talent, tangible talent. What they can't account for are the intangibles. And just like I know about any successful business person, just like I know about any successful athlete, it's the intangibles that get you to that point of success and allow you to sustain it. So the intangibles aren't the thing that they can't really be measured from the outside. That's where the confidence comes in. You put in the work. You're confident in your preparation more than anything else. If you can walk into a situation not completely knowing what to expect, but knowing that you are prepared in a way that you can take on the unexpected, that's where the confidence piece comes from.
You remind me of an expression I used to say very often in school is not everything that can be measured counts, and not everything that counts can be measured. So I think that really ties right into the intangible stuff. You're like, odds are really just based off things that can be measured, but not necessarily things that count. And so you're like, 100%. The things that count are, I know what I'm able to do. I know what my strategy is. That I know is not factored into the odds. This is why I love interviewing professional athletes, because it absolutely applies to investing. It's literally a game of odds. And so often you have to look beyond the measurable parts, not that you ignore that. Of course you pay attention to that, but you don't rely just on that. And so you're able to look beyond a lot of those things and find the unmeasurables that count. And that's where the irrational confidence comes in. I love it. So now you've gone from college kid with that irrational confidence to NFL, right? Always, you were up against the wall. You had the odds always against you, and you still pulled it out because you knew that there were things about you that were not put in the odds. I love that. So now you go doing your first deal, learning lessons about leadership and that fine line between active and passive and leadership and all-star, doing angel deals. and now you're jumping into venture capital, or you have. So you've got 100 mil ready to go. Maybe walk us through of going through, what was that catalyst that really got you to go all in on venture capital?
So I had been in the space for a while. Just through my experience in the space, I started to see a couple trends, right? My colleagues were still getting involved in the space, but ultimately, more often than not, the roles were like brand ambassador, mascot type of roles. Like, we're going to go and raise the smart money, and then we're going to bring you guys in to kind of be the shiny money. And those opportunities financially, they work out. But you see it far too many times where when the things don't work out, the athlete that got the advisory shares have nothing to show for it. Maybe something happens with the company, like a FTX, when that whole thing hit the fan. If you watch closely, the first people to really be scrutinized were the athletes that were the paid ambassadors, right? And then finally, the guys and the people that actually did the defrauding got taken care of. Right. So you kind of saw a trend of athletes being put in situations where they're not influential capital. They don't really have say-so in the business, but they're the visible face of the business. And in seeing that time and time again, on top of the fact that, there just wasn't a lot of diversity across the types of people that were getting access to these investments. Right. And so if the plan is to make you a brand ambassador, a mascot, they're always going to find the most marketable players, right? So there's a contingent of players that never really got access to quality deals because they weren't marketable, right? So you just kind of saw this pattern over and over again. And, when I compared it to my upbringing and the fact that I didn't know this world existed until I got into the NFL, like, you start to see these pockets of people that are just kind of left behind and left completely out of the conversation. And over the years, I tried to take that on, from an educational standpoint with athletes. I launched a couple education programs, trying to help to connect athletes with education around venture capital and entrepreneurship. I ended up partnering with Columbia Business School, and we launched an exec ed program, and ran it for about 2 years around that. And it just didn't gain the traction that I had hoped for. And, the patterns never went anywhere. The same roles kind of never went anywhere. I kind of got to a point. A co-founder of mine with the fund, we've been friends for about 5 or 6 years now. And for a couple of years, we just kind of would ideate around this topic. And finally, about 18 months ago, we just kind of got to a place where I think, I was just in a place, in my life and ready to kind of turn the page on what I was doing at the time. I think he was in a similar space, and we just started to spitball around if we wanted to do something in the venture world, like, what could it look like and how can we make it different? And, we started to kind of put some ideas on paper. And the first thing that we led with was, it's got to be built around access. Access is the biggest bottleneck in venture capital and private equity. You see the same, top 1 to 5% of folks get access to all of the quality deals. And then the rest of the world is dealing with all the shitty deals.
That's it.
And having to pick from the trash pile. And, what we saw was if there was an opportunity, if there was a vehicle that we could create that gave the retail investor, the athlete, the same access as the institutional investor, that's something that we can get excited about. And then we started to think about, where do we have influence? Where do we have the opportunity to kind of pull together a team and pull together people that can actually pull this vision off? And again, he's a former MMA fighter. I obviously have my background in sports. We looked at the sports asset class and what's happening there. And we saw, sports is the thing that unites us all. We're all kind of paying into the sports ecosystem in some form or fashion. Some of us paying in with blood, sweat, and tears. I've paid my blood, sweat, and tears, and now I'm paying into youth sports and travel sports with my kids, right? So people are investing in sports through their fandom, through their kids in their youth sports, through their own sports careers. But there's no meaningful way and there's no meaningful ownership to get anything back out of it, right? So it's a one-way investment. So we kind of started to look at these different pieces, and we started to kind of put this puzzle together. We knew we had to have an accessible vehicle. We knew we wanted to be in sports. We also knew that we aren't, cut from a cloth that can go write $600 million check to get a spot into an MLB team or NFL team. So we knew we had to figure out, where are the picks and shovels, within the sports business. So we just kind of strategically started to put this map together and put this puzzle together. And what we landed on is this concept that we're currently building out called Champion Venture Partners. And it's ultimately, it's a fund that's accessible to everyone. It's built around access. We're investing in what we call a sports value chain, which is, the picks and shovels of the sports industry, everything from sports tech, whether it's enhancing player performance or enhancing business intelligence, fan engagement, media and content, which if you look at all these crazy sports team valuations, the biggest catalysts are the TV rights deals. And that streaming is coming. You see Amazon, you see Netflix, right? So media and content's a big one. Sports medicine, whether it's through health technology, health and wellness, holistic health, real estate, hospitality, a bunch of experiences, the top golfs of the world. You see what's happening with this, I think it's called Cosm, the immersive game viewing experience. So you see all of these different pieces and these different verticals that make sports what it is. And, that's where our focus is. Launching a fund that allows everyone from retail investor with $1,000 to institutional investor with a $10 million minimum to invest in this fund, this evergreen fund that we are kind of building in the likeness of a Berkshire Hathaway type of model.
That's brilliant. And in this game that we call high finance, you hit it. You hit it perfect. This is a game of access. And typically, however you get there, what I've found is the key that unlocks the door for access often, and as a fund manager will say, is what I call R3. It's your reputation, your relationships, and your results. And as you start to optimize those three assets, it starts to open doors for access. But what about those people who didn't? And that was the question that you and your partner, Nick, as Champion Venture Partners was born, you really said, but there are some people who still don't have access, who have an excellent reputation, super honest, hardworking, very talented, but maybe they just didn't have the exposure that we did. And what you did is you've opened this interval fund, and you're able to really open up this can of worms, so to speak, but really open up access to people who may not have had the opportunity, that maybe they didn't go to the best school, or maybe they don't belong to the right country club or whatever. That's how it used to be. It really did. We all know it. It was just this very elite kind of people that get the best private deals. And this whole show is on private alternative assets. And so opening up, now you create an opportunity for all, a fund for all, accredited, non-accredited. It's just opening up access to these deals, especially for those who can't. And I love that about you. And that's one of the things that I've really come to admire about you. And you and I are very aligned on that. And I call it the rise of the rest, is to say there's just some people that got left behind that shouldn't. They're great. They just didn't have the opportunity or the right strategy or the right mentor to put their arm around and be like, all right, come here, kid. I'll show you how to get it done. So I've had those moments where someone reached back and was like, let me help you out. And maybe you have too. And so that's back to that earlier point you made. That's leadership, is going to these people and helping them to do things that they never thought they could. And it all starts with access to things that maybe they don't have access with. And so, I would just summarize, just listening to you and getting to know your spirit and everything that you've done in your fund. And we certainly love you for it, man. But showing people that you don't have to sacrifice your purpose to make profits. You don't have to sacrifice your purpose to make profits. And the other one is showcasing that. Show the world that not only will I provide access, but I will provide purpose, right? Like your very first deal, you loved it. Why? Wasn't because of the money, it was for the impact. And then you just kept putting in reps, and you kept that spirit about you to say, I'm still going to produce an impact, but then we're also going to get partners, we're going to get teams, we're going to get everybody together, we're going to make profits from this. And now you've elevated it to say, look, maybe the old way of doing it was this very closed community type of thing. I'm going to blow it wide open, and I'm going to make sure that investors have access to this, to some of the best deals that I can come by. So before we wrap everything up, is there anything else, any closing remarks or anything at all?
No, I can say this, man. I really enjoyed getting to know you. Really enjoyed this show, and I think the thing that connects us is this need and want to do what's right. And I think for me personally, I think part of that is understanding that yes, I've been very, very fortunate and very blessed in the journey that I've been on. But it's also understanding that at any given point, any given one of those games, and I'm always an injury away from this whole thing that I've been building kind of falling apart. And I think, when you are able to take not just the destination, but the process and the journey to that destination with you and keep it with you, I think it gives you a lens that I know for myself, it's always kind of put me in a position where I'm always looking to figure out a way to make the path smoother for the younger version of me. And, I think this fund is a kind of a representation of that. As somebody that without football, I don't have access to this world. I don't have access to any of the deals that we are looking to invest in and open up access for others to invest in. So I think, that understanding and bringing the process and the journey along with you kind of keeps you in a mode where the lens is always has a little bit of purity in it and a little bit of altruism in it, especially in this world that's way, way too cynical. But no, I appreciate this platform. I appreciate this conversation because there aren't many that allow somebody with my background to really go into the person. Right. A lot of them stay surface level and they dig into the persona and what it was like to play on Sundays. But the Sundays were that's the icing on the cake. The real journey was Monday through Saturday. How do you get ready for Sunday? And I think that's the part of the journey that's transferable in every part. And I appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to kind of walk through some of that, because I think the more that we can share those processes as individuals, the more we can help others along the way.
That's right. I appreciate you being open and vulnerable with us today, man. So just to summarize everything that Marques and I spoke about, just remember to be a leader before you're an all-star. The other one is find the platform to put in the reps at every level. There's no finish lines. There's only starting lines. So just make sure that you're always putting in the reps, no matter what starting line you're at. And number 3, reach back and try to provide access. Not everybody has the opportunities you do. No matter where you are in life, there's someone praying to God right now to have your life, to have the opportunities, to even have another breath. So make sure that you're able to reach back like Marques is doing, is to say, I get the game. It's a game of access, and I'm going to provide that for people. And that's one of his biggest purposes. And then showcase your purpose alongside your profits. You do these things, and you too will be well on your way in your pursuit of making billions.